You are not as rational as you think. You believe your decisions are logical, carefully considered, rational. You believe you are in control. But what if that's an illusion? What if most of your choices, what you buy, who you trust, who you admire, who you dismiss, are already decided before logic even enters the room, before facts, before analysis, before conscious thought? Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, spent over 50 years studying how humans actually think, not how we believe we think. And what he discovered is deeply uncomfortable. Your brain is not built to be accurate. It is built to be fast. Speed helped our ancestors survive, but in the modern world, speed creates blind spots. That's why highly intelligent people make terrible decisions. Experts confidently predict the wrong outcomes. The most convincing person in the room is often the most wrong. Your brain doesn't ask, "Is this true?" It asks, "Does this feel right?" And once it feels right, logic's job becomes simple: to justify the decision after it's already made. This book will permanently change how you see your thoughts, your confidence, your judgments. Because once you understand how your mind really works, you'll never trust your first thought again.
The two systems running your mind.
Your brain is not a single unified thinker. It is a partnership. Two systems, two speeds, two completely different ways of seeing the world. Daniel Kahneman calls them System 1 and System 2. System 1 is your mental autopilot. It is fast, automatic, emotional, and effortless. It operates instantly. When you see a face and know they're angry, that's System 1. When you finish someone's sentence, System 1. When you slam the brakes without calculating distance, System 1. It jumps to conclusions. It fills in missing information. It creates stories from incomplete data. And most importantly, it works without asking permission. You don't choose to activate System 1. It's always on. Now meet System 2. System 2 is slower. It is deliberate, analytical, logical, and effortful. It's what you use when solving 27 times 43, when comparing loan interest rates, when questioning an assumption, when forcing yourself to concentrate. System 2 doesn't react. It evaluates. But here's the uncomfortable truth. System 2 is lazy. It requires energy, focus, mental effort, and your brain is wired to conserve energy whenever possible. So what happens? System 1 generates a quick answer. System 2 usually just nods and says, "Looks fine." Most of the time, System 2 doesn't double-check. It doesn't investigate. It doesn't slow things down. It simply endorses the first story that feels coherent, which means System 1 runs most of your life. System 2 only steps in when forced. You feel like you're thinking carefully, but most of the time, you're running on instinct, and instinct is fast, but fast doesn't mean accurate. Why fast thinking feels so right?
System 1 doesn't just think fast. It feels certain. When it gives you an answer, it doesn't whisper. It declares. And that declaration feels powerful, clear, convincing. But here's the dangerous part. The feeling of certainty is not proof of truth. System 1 hates uncertainty. Ambiguity makes it uncomfortable. Silence makes it restless. "I don't know" feels unsafe. So instead of waiting for evidence, it creates an answer immediately. And it would rather give you a wrong answer now than no answer at all, because evolution didn't reward hesitation. If our ancestors saw movement in the bushes, It was safer to assume predator than to pause and analyze probabilities. Fast reactions saved lives. But today, that same speed can distort reality. If something looks familiar, System 1 relaxes. If it sounds smooth, System 1 trusts it. If it fits a story, System 1 accepts it. It doesn't check statistics. It doesn't demand proof. It simply asks, does this feel coherent? If yes, it moves on. This is why first impressions are incredibly powerful. Stereotypes form instantly and resist correction. Repeated statements start feeling like facts. Say something often enough and System 1 stops questioning it. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar, and familiarity feels safe. The more fluent an idea sounds, the more confident we become in it, even if it's completely wrong. Confidence, Kahneman warns us, is often a byproduct of speed, not knowledge, not intelligence, not depth. Speed. System 1 produces a quick answer, and System 2, our slower thinker, usually accepts it without resistance. So when you feel absolutely sure about something, pause. Ask yourself, is this certainty coming from evidence or from instinct? Because sometimes confidence is not accuracy. Sometimes confidence is just speed wearing a convincing mask. Cognitive ease. Why familiarity tricks you. Your brain loves what feels easy, not what is true, not what is accurate, not what is wise, what feels easy. Easy to read, easy to pronounce, easy to recognize, easy to process. This mental comfort has a name: cognitive ease. When something is processed smoothly by your mind, it creates a subtle signal. This is safe. This is familiar. This makes sense. And once that signal appears, your brain quietly upgrades it to, this must be true. This must be good. This must be trustworthy. But notice what just happened. No evidence was checked. No deep analysis occurred. No logic was applied. It simply felt right. Kahneman discovered that people are more likely to believe statements printed in clear, readable fonts compared to hard-to-read ones. Same information, different typography. The easier it is to read, the more truthful it seems. Why? Because difficulty creates friction, and friction triggers doubt. Your brain interprets mental effort as risk, so if a name is easier to pronounce, you unconsciously assume the person is more competent. If you've heard an idea repeatedly, you start believing it, even if it's false. This is called the illusion of truth effect. Repetition breeds familiarity. Familiarity breeds comfort. Comfort breeds belief. Your mind confuses comfort with correctness. That's why catchy slogans feel convincing, simple messages spread faster, repeated misinformation becomes common knowledge. Marketing understands this deeply. The more often you see a brand, the safer it feels. Politics understands it too. Repeat a message often enough, and resistance weakens. Even your own thoughts exploit this bias. The more you repeat a self-story, I'm bad at business, I'm not good at relationships, I always fail, the more natural it feels. And the more natural it feels, the more true it becomes in your mind. Cognitive ease is powerful. It reduces mental strain. It conserves energy. It makes the world feel manageable. But it also makes you vulnerable. Because truth is not always easy, and ease is not truth. Sometimes what feels smooth is simply unchallenged, and sometimes thinking harder is the only way to see clearly. The anchoring effect. Why first numbers control you. Let's begin with a simple question. Is the percentage of African countries in the United Nations higher or lower than 10%? Pause.
Now, what do you think the actual percentage is? Most people who hear 10% give answers slightly above or below that number. Now imagine I ask a different group, is the percentage higher or lower than 65%? And then ask for the actual number. Suddenly, their answers jump dramatically higher. Nothing changed about reality, only the first number changed. That number became an anchor, and once it appears, your mind cannot ignore it. This is the anchoring effect, one of the most powerful biases Daniel Kahneman uncovered. Your brain doesn't calculate from zero. It grabs the first number it sees and adjusts from there. But here's the flaw. The adjustment is usually insufficient. Even when you know the number is random, even when you're told it's irrelevant, even when you consider yourself rational, the first number quietly sets the range of your thinking, and from that moment on, your judgment is pulled toward it. Anchoring happens everywhere. In shopping, a jacket labeled 10,000 rupees marked down to 4,999 rupees feels like a bargain. But would 4,999 rupees feel cheap if you had never seen 10,000 rupees first? In negotiations, the first offer sets the battlefield. It defines what feels reasonable, even if it's outrageous. In performance reviews, in salary discussions, in real estate listings, in courtroom sentencing, the first number creates gravity, and your brain orbits around it. You might believe you're making independent calculations, but often you're just adjusting from someone else's starting point. And here's the most unsettling part. You can't simply decide to ignore the anchor. It influences you even when you're aware of it, because System 1 immediately treats that first number as relevant. And System 2? It adjusts, but not enough. Your mind doesn't start from truth. It starts from whatever it sees first, which means whoever controls the first number often controls the outcome.
Availability heuristic. Why dramatic things feel common. What feels common isn't always common. What feels dangerous isn't always dangerous. Yet your brain makes decisions as if it is. Why? Because your mind doesn't measure probability with spreadsheets. It measures probability with memory. Daniel Kahneman called this the availability heuristic. Your brain estimates how likely something is by asking one simple question. How easily can I recall an example? If examples come quickly, it assumes the event is frequent. If examples are hard to recall, it assumes the event is rare. Now, think about plane crashes. When one happens, it dominates headlines for days. News alerts, breaking coverage, emotional interviews, dramatic visuals. Your mind absorbs the intensity. So when you think about flying, those vivid images surface instantly, and your brain concludes, flying must be dangerous. But statistically, flying is far safer than driving. Yet car accidents rarely dominate national news because they happen quietly, daily, and without spectacle. Shark attacks feel terrifying because the image is dramatic, primal, emotionally charged. But you're far more likely to be injured by something ordinary, like slipping in your bathroom. Crime can feel like it's everywhere because violent incidents are broadcast repeatedly, clips replayed, details analyzed, emotion amplified. Your brain mistakes repetition and vividness for frequency because emotional intensity strengthens memory, and strong memory feels like evidence, but it isn't. Your mind is asking, can I picture it clearly? Not, what do the actual numbers say? Emotion beats math every time because System 1 responds to images, to stories, to drama. It doesn't respond to percentages.
So the more sensational an event is, the more available it becomes in your memory. And the more available it becomes, the more common it feels. This bias shapes what you fear, what you avoid, what policies you support, what risks you overestimate, what opportunities you ignore. Availability is not truth. It is visibility, and visibility is often manipulated. If someone wants you to believe something is widespread, they don't need data. They just need repetition, because your brain trusts what it can easily recall, even when recall has nothing to do with reality.
Confidence versus competence. One of the most uncomfortable truths in this book is this: confidence is not proof of competence. In fact, confidence often signals the opposite. We are naturally drawn to certainty, to bold statements, to decisive answers, to people who speak without hesitation, because certainty feels like strength. But Kahneman's research revealed something deeply unsettling. Experts, even highly trained professionals, regularly overestimate their knowledge. They underestimate randomness. They ignore luck. They dismiss uncertainty. And when outcomes happen, they create stories that make everything seem predictable. This is called the illusion of validity. If a story is coherent, we trust it, even if it's built on weak evidence, even if predictions were wrong, even if results were pure chance. Think about financial analysts confidently predicting markets, political commentators explaining elections after they happen, sports analysts dissecting victories and losses. After the result is known, everything suddenly makes sense. But before the result, uncertainty ruled. The human brain is uncomfortable with randomness. It wants order. It wants cause and effect. It wants to believe if we understand the pattern, we can control the outcome. So when something happens, System 1 quickly builds a narrative, a clean story with clear reasons, clear causes, clear conclusions, and that clarity feels like expertise. But clarity is not accuracy. A confident voice does not mean correct insight. Sometimes it simply means the speaker feels certain, and certainty is persuasive. Because the human mind prefers stories over statistics, meaning over probability, narratives over numbers. Statistics are cold, stories are human, and confidence makes stories contagious. That's why charismatic leaders often outperform cautious thinkers, why bold predictions get more attention than nuanced analysis, why people who say, "I might be wrong," rarely go viral. The illusion of validity thrives when the story is simple, the explanation feels coherent, and the speaker sounds sure. And once we accept the story, we stop questioning it, even if the evidence is thin, even if reality is messy, even if randomness played the biggest role of all. True competence often sounds uncertain because real experts understand complexity, they understand limits, they understand how much they don't know. But uncertainty is quiet, confidence is loud, and loud is persuasive. So the next time someone sounds absolutely certain, ask yourself, are they truly competent or just convincingly confident? Loss aversion. Why losing hurts more than winning. Imagine this. You find 100 rupees on the street. It feels good, a small win, a pleasant surprise. Now imagine you lose 100 rupees from your wallet. The frustration, the irritation, the regret. Same amount of money, very different emotional impact. Why? Because your brain does not treat gains and losses equally. Daniel Kahneman's research revealed something profound. Losses hurt about twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. This is called loss aversion. Your brain is wired to protect what you already have, not to maximize what you could gain. From an evolutionary perspective, this made sense.
losing food, losing shelter, losing status. Those losses could threaten survival. So your brain evolved to treat loss as a serious danger signal. Even today, that wiring remains. That's why people fear change, even when change offers improvement. Investors panic sell when markets dip. Employees stay in jobs they dislike. Entrepreneurs hesitate before taking smart risks. Avoiding pain feels intelligent, safe, responsible. But here's the hidden cost. Loss aversion often traps you. You hold on to declining investments because selling locks in the loss. You stay in bad relationships because leaving feels like losing time already spent. You reject opportunities because the possibility of failure feels heavier than the possibility of success feels exciting. Your brain frames decisions like this: what if I lose? Instead of, what could I gain? And because losses feel twice as powerful, your decisions skew toward safety, toward caution, toward maintaining the status quo. Even when growth requires discomfort, even when the risk is reasonable, even when the potential upside is greater. Loss aversion doesn't just influence money, it shapes careers, relationships, health decisions, personal growth. Because the pain of losing identity, reputation, or certainty feels intense, and your brain's primary goal is protection, not happiness, not fulfillment, protection. But here's the paradox. By overprotecting yourself from small losses, you often block yourself from large gains. Your mind prefers avoiding pain over pursuing possibility. And unless you recognize this bias, it will quietly control your biggest decisions.
The endowment effect. Why you overvalue what you own. The moment something becomes yours, it changes. Not physically, but psychologically. Before ownership, it's just an object, a neutral option, one among many. After ownership, it becomes special. This is called the endowment effect, and it's one of the most powerful biases shaping your decisions. Researchers discovered something surprising. When people are randomly given a coffee mug, they demand far more money to sell it than they would have been willing to pay to buy it. Same mug, different ownership status. The moment it becomes mine, its value increases in the mind. Why? Because ownership creates attachment, and attachment activates loss aversion. Selling the mug no longer feels like a transaction. It feels like losing something, even though you didn't even want it before. This bias explains so much of human behavior. Why you keep old clothes you never wear, why your garage fills with unused items, why your bookshelf holds books you'll never reread. Because getting rid of them feels like losing value, even if keeping them provides none. But it goes deeper than objects. You overvalue your ideas because they are your ideas. You defend weak arguments because they are your arguments. You cling to outdated beliefs because they are your beliefs. Ownership isn't just physical, it's psychological. The more you invest time, effort, or identity into something, the harder it becomes to release it. A business plan, a relationship, a career path, a political opinion. Letting go doesn't feel neutral, it feels like loss. And as we learned earlier, loss hurts more than gain feels good. So instead of asking, is this actually valuable? Your mind quietly asks, is this mine? And if the answer is yes, it inflates the value, it protects it, it rationalizes it, it defends it. Even when the evidence says it's flawed, even when logic says it's outdated, even when letting go would be smarter. The endowment effect keeps you attached to what you own, but growth often requires detachment. Sometimes the most rational move is to treat what you own as if you didn't, because value does not come from ownership, it comes from utility, and your brain often confuses the two. planning fallacy, why you underestimate everything.
Think about the last time you started a project. Maybe it was a business idea, a YouTube channel, a fitness plan, a home renovation, a simple deadline at work. You probably thought, this won't take long. I'll finish this in a week. This time will be different. And then it took longer, cost more, demanded more effort, delivered less than expected. This pattern has a name, the planning fallacy. Daniel Kahneman discovered that humans consistently underestimate time, cost, risk, and complexity. Almost every project expands beyond the original estimate, and yet we keep believing the next one will be smooth. Why? Because when we plan, we focus on the future. We imagine the steps working perfectly. We visualize ideal conditions. We picture ourselves productive, disciplined, focused. This is called the inside view. We zoom into the specific plan in front of us and construct a best-case narrative. We don't picture distractions. We don't anticipate delays. We don't account for fatigue, uncertainty, or unexpected obstacles. We trust optimism, even when past experience says otherwise. You may have missed deadlines before. You may have underestimated budgets before. You may have struggled with consistency before. But your brain says, that was different. This time, I'll do it right. Optimism feels motivating. It energizes you. It pushes you to start. But optimism without realism creates disappointment because you ignore the outside view. The outside view asks, how long do similar projects usually take? What happened the last 5 times I did something like this? What does data say? Instead of asking, how do I hope this will go? When companies plan mega projects, bridges, software systems, infrastructure, cost overruns are the norm, not the exception. But every new plan begins with fresh confidence because System 1 imagines smooth execution and System 2 rarely forces a statistical reality check. The planning fallacy isn't stupidity, it's human nature. Your brain is wired to believe in its own competence, to picture success, to discount failure, because imagining obstacles feels discouraging. But realism doesn't kill ambition, it strengthens it. When you add buffer time, when you increase your budget estimate, when you expect setbacks, you don't weaken the plan, you protect it. Optimism starts projects, realism finishes them. How to think better when it matters. After everything we've uncovered, you might expect Kahneman to say, stop trusting your intuition. Use logic all the time. Rely only on System 2. But he doesn't, because System 1 isn't the enemy. It's fast, efficient, essential for survival. Without it, you couldn't drive a car, recognize faces, react to danger. The goal isn't to eliminate intuition. The goal is to recognize when intuition becomes risky. Kahneman's real message is simpler and harder. Know when System 1 is dangerous. Slow down when the stakes are high, the decision is irreversible, strong emotions are involved, money, reputation, or relationships are on the line, because these are the moments where bias quietly takes control. When you're angry, when you're afraid, when you're excited, when you're under pressure. System 1 speaks loudly, and it sounds convincing. It tells you, this feels right, this must be true. I've seen this before. I know how this ends. But feeling certain is not the same as being correct. So pause. Engage System 2 intentionally. Ask yourself, what evidence am I ignoring? What assumptions am I making? If I'm wrong, how would I know? What would prove me wrong? Am I reacting or reasoning? These questions create friction, and friction is uncomfortable, but friction is what slows bias.
Thinking well is not natural. It doesn't happen automatically. Your brain is designed for efficiency, not accuracy, for speed, not depth, for survival, not perfect judgment. So better thinking must be trained through deliberate pauses, through seeking disconfirming evidence, through inviting criticism, through considering probabilities, not just stories. You don't need to doubt every small choice, but when it matters, slow down, zoom out, adopt the outside view, invite discomfort, because clarity often hides behind hesitation. The wisest thinkers are not the fastest. They are the ones who know when to slow down. Final message, plus call to action. After everything we've explored, biases, illusions, mental shortcuts, invisible traps, one powerful truth remains. Thinking fast and slow teaches us this. Your mind is brilliant, capable of astonishing speed, pattern recognition, creativity, but it is also deeply flawed. It jumps to conclusions, it invents stories, it fears losses, it overvalues what it owns, it trusts confidence over evidence. And most of the time, you don't even notice. That's the humbling part. You are not irrational because you are weak. You are irrational because you are human. Understanding your biases doesn't make you perfect. You will still anchor. You will still overestimate. You will still feel loss more intensely than gain. But awareness changes something powerful. It creates distance between impulse and action, between emotion and decision, between reaction and reflection. And that small pause is where better thinking begins. Awareness is the first form of intelligence because you cannot correct what you cannot see. The goal isn't to eliminate intuition. The goal is to question it when it matters most, to slow down when stakes are high, to invite doubt when certainty feels seductive, to ask, what if I'm wrong? In a world that rewards speed, hot takes, instant opinions, and confident voices, the rarest skill is thoughtful judgment. The most valuable edge is mental clarity. And the most important investment is not in markets, trends, or tools. It's in your thinking. Because every outcome in your life flows through one filter, your mind. If this exploration challenged how you see decisions, if it made you question your assumptions, if it revealed blind spots you didn't know you had, then this is just the beginning. Subscribe to Insight Beam for timeless ideas that sharpen your thinking, expose hidden mental traps, strengthen decision-making, and help you grow intellectually. Because the most important skill in life is not thinking faster, it's thinking better.